The caravan begins at dawn, a silent departure. The first light of dawn crept gently over the endless dunes, casting long, soft shadows across the sand. In the heart of a quiet desert town, a small caravan stirred to life. No loud words, no hurried movements, just a muffled sound of feet against the earth, and the low groans of camels rising from sleep. The air was still cool, crisp, and filled with a faint scent of dust and distant spices. Men in flowing robes moved slowly and deliberately, checking ropes, adjusting saddlebags, and murmuring blessings under their breath. A calm rhythm pulsed through the early morning, an ancient rhythm, as old as the sands themselves. One by one, the camels were loaded, their patient eyes blinking slowly in the golden glow. Leather creaked, water skins sloshed, sand shifted under their hooves. There was no rush. There never was. Desert travel was not a race, but a quiet pact between man, beast, and the ever-watching sun. The caravan leader, a tall man with a weathered face and wise eyes, stood still for a moment at the edge of the town. He listened, not for noise, but for stillness. The kind of stillness that tells you the desert is ready to receive you. With a slight nod, he stepped forward, and the first camel followed. Then another, and another. The line moved like a slow river of fabric and fur, winding through the outer dunes. Behind them, the town slowly disappeared, swallowed by sand and memory. The journey had begun, and the desert, vast and silent, welcomed them like it had welcomed 1,000 before. The desert wakes, footsteps on the sand. As the morning sun climbed higher, the shadows shrank. The sand shimmered with soft gold, warm now under the feet of men and beasts. Each footstep left behind a delicate imprint, momentary, soon to be erased by the wind. The caravan continued its slow rhythm, the soft jingling of harnesses and the occasional rustle of cloth against cloth. Nobody spoke much. The silence was sacred. The desert required it. It absorbed sound like the sand swallowed tracks. Birds circled high above, their cries faint and far between. A lizard darted between rocks, vanishing like a whisper. Life in the desert was never loud. It was a murmur, a breath, a flicker. The caravan moved forward through this ancient quiet. They passed an abandoned well, a crumbling stone circle, half buried in sand. No one stopped, but heads turned slightly, as if in silent respect. It had once been a place of rest. Now it was only a shadow. The sun rose higher. The world turned a little whiter, a little hotter. But still, the caravan moved, step by step. The pace never quickened, never slowed. Just a steady echo of the same journey walked by thousands before them. The footsteps faded behind them. The road lay ahead. Camels and cargo, what they carried. The camels walked with a grace born of centuries. Their long legs moved like clockwork, steady and unbothered. On their backs were bundles wrapped in coarse fabric, tied with thick ropes and ancient knots. Inside those bundles were treasures, not treasures of gold or jewels, but rarer things. Dates from distant orchards, salt carved from dry lakes, spices that whispered of forests and rivers far away, scrolls written in forgotten tongues, fabrics dyed with colors unseen by desert eyes. Each camel bore more than cargo. They bore history. They carried stories. One held jars of oil. Another, tiny bells that once rang in temples. Another, baskets of almonds sealed with wax. Each package had a place. Each item a purpose. Men walked alongside, adjusting straps and brushing sand from the corners of baskets. They knew what each camel carried. They knew what must not fall, what must not break, and what must never be opened. The desert was both path and protector. What was carried across it became more valuable, not less, for if it reached its destination, it bore the seal of survival, and the camels, gentle and tireless, carried it all without complaint. The guide, a man of few words. He was known only as the guide. His name, if he had one, was never spoken. His face was shaded by a long cloth, and his eyes squinted against the glare. He walked ahead of the caravan, never turning back. He knew the stars. He knew the dunes. He knew the dry riverbeds and the way sand changed color before a storm. He rarely spoke, but when he did, his voice was like wind over stone, low, dry, and certain. Some said he had walked the desert since childhood. Others said he had no home, no tribe, only the horizon. He carried a long staff, worn smooth from years of walking. Around his waist, a small pouch. No one knew what was inside. He marked direction with small signs, stones left at certain angles, pieces of cloth tied to thorny bushes. And every evening, he would draw a short line in the sand, sit by it, and close his eyes. The others followed without question. His silence was comfort, his presence security. For in the desert, knowledge is not told, it is shown. And the guide knew: sunlight on sand, hours of golden silence. Midday came, and the sun burned white in the sky. The desert glowed. The sand, once cool and soft, turned warm, then hot, then hotter. But the caravan did not stop. Their steps slowed slightly. Their shadows shrank. Sweat gathered on brows, but still they moved. The only sounds were the breathing of camels and the faint wind brushing across dunes. Sometimes a bird would cry out, or a saddle would creak. But mostly there was silence. A golden silence. The kind of silence that doesn't just quiet the ears, but the thoughts. The kind of silence that feels like centuries stretched across the sand. Each man retreated into himself. Some thought of home, some thought of nothing. The desert did not ask questions. It only listened. The dunes shimmered in waves. Heat danced above the ground. And still they walked, as they always had, as they always would. The whispering winds, first evening under the stars. As the sun dipped toward the horizon, shadows grew longer once again. The blistering heat gave way to a soft, dry coolness that kissed the skin. With a signal from the guide, the caravan halted for the night. Blankets were unrolled. Fires were lit, not for heat, but for light. The wind picked up gently, brushing over the dunes with a hushed whistle, like the desert itself was breathing a lullaby. Camels were unburdened, allowed to rest. Men sat cross-legged on woven mats, sipping water and chewing dates in silence. The sky above them shifted slowly from golden to lavender to deep blue, and then one by one the stars appeared. No city lights, no noise, just the desert sky, 1,000 lights watching over them. The wind continued to whisper. It wrapped itself around their tents and hummed softly through fibers. Some said the desert wind carried voices from the past, travelers from long ago, caravan men just like them. The men said little that night. Their eyes stayed fixed on stars. Their thoughts scattered like sand and wind. The journey was far from over, and the stars had only begun their watch. Campfire conversations, stories from other lands. As the fire crackled low, a few voices rose softly. The first stories were brief, about markets in far-off cities, about rains that fell for days, about oceans some had only heard of. They spoke slowly, as if even words had conserved their energy in the desert. A merchant described the scent of a cedar forest. Another man remembered a river wide as 100 camels. A third had once seen snow, and his voice trembled with wonder as he described its softness. The listeners nodded, not always in understanding, but in acceptance. These were tales carried like cargo, and like all cargo in the desert, they grew in value the farther they traveled. Laughter was rare, but not absent. Smiles were slow, but sincere. Even the fire seemed to lean closer, hungry for the warmth of stories. When the last voice faded, silence returned like an old friend, and the stars blinked quietly above. Dreams beneath the canvas. A night in the desert. The tents were simple. Thin cloth stretched over wooden frames. But under them, sleep came easily. The desert night was cool. The wind was calm. The stars stood still. Inside each tent, the slow breaths of resting men. Outside, camels lay folded in the sand, their long necks curved like question marks against the moonlight. Some dreamed of cities with towers of gold. Others dreamed of home, of voices, food, the smell of earth after rain. The desert watched. It did not disturb them. It held its breath with them. Occasionally, the wind lifted a flap or shifted a pebble, like fingers turning a page in a book. But no danger approached. Not tonight, just a gentle cradle of sleep. and a sky deeper than thought. The mirage, a strange illusion in the heat. By midday of the next day, the air shimmered with heat. Waves danced above the dunes, bending like glass. Then someone pointed. A shimmer on the horizon. It looked like water. Cool, blue, inviting. But they all knew better. A mirage. It moved when they moved. It vanished when they stared too long. It was a desert silent trick. A gift or a tease, no one knew. Still, for a few moments, it gave them something to chase, even if only with their eyes. And when it was gone, no one complained. No one mourned, because it was part of the desert story. And they were part of it now. A lost camel. Calm search in the vast dunes. That afternoon, one camel did not return from a rest break. It had wandered, as camels sometimes do, following a scent or sound only they could sense. There was no panic, no shouting, just calm hands gathering ropes, calm feet stepping onto sand. 2 men, and a boy walked out, following the faint prints. Their steps left new ones beside the old. The desert gave clues, if one knew where to look. An hour passed, then 2. Finally, beyond a dip in the dunes, they found the camel, resting beneath a dry bush, eyes half closed, chewing thoughtfully. They didn't scold it. They simply guided it back, speaking softly. And when they returned, the others nodded. The caravan continued. Whole again, the desert, indifferent, watched them go. The oasis, water, palms, and quiet gratitude. Late in the day, when the heat was beginning to ebb, the guide raised his hand. A low murmur of relief moved through the caravan. In the near distance, an oasis. Palms waved gently. Water shimmered, clear and still. The smell of life clung to the air. Wet earth, ripened dates. The subtle musk of greenery untouched by wind. The camels quickened slightly, sensing it. Not a run, just a shift in pace, as if their legs remembered hope. One by one, they knelt by the water. Not splashing, not disturbing. Just drinking, slow, deep contented. The men washed their faces, cupped water to their lips, and sat in shade that felt like an embrace. They did not speak loudly. There was no need. The oasis gave, and the caravan received with quiet, reverent gratitude. Caravan music, slow rhythms of ancient songs. That evening, with bellies full and skins refilled, someone took out a small drum. Another, a stringed instrument no larger than a hand. A rhythm began, soft, steady, like footsteps over sand. The music was not performed. It simply happened, like wind or stars. Notes hung in the air and dissolved into the night. The men nodded slowly, some tapping fingers, some with eyes closed, remembering songs from childhood. These songs were not meant for dancing. They were not meant to stir. They were lullabies for the journey, for the road behind and ahead. The camels listened too, or so it seemed, still and calm in the shadows. And the desert, vast and listening, did not interrupt. A sandstorm approaches, gentle warnings in the air. The next morning, the wind arrived earlier than usual. It carried a different weight, drier, harsher. It scratched rather than stroked. The guide squinted into the distance, then drew a circle in the sand with a line through it. A sandstorm. The caravan adjusted. Cloths pulled tighter. Pack secured. Camels huddled closer. Not fearfully, just prepared. The storm came slowly. A distant blur rising like smoke. Then closer. A roar muffled by cloth and wind. Eyes shut. Backs turned. Time passed without count. Then stillness. The storm had passed, leaving soft curves in the dunes, like the desert had rewritten itself. No words were said, only nods. The journey resumed. Stillness after the storm, cleansing silence. After the storm, the world seemed softer. The air felt cleaner, like the wind had swept away all memory. The sand was smooth, untouched. The sky a clearer blue. The caravan walked more slowly that day, not from weariness, but respect. The storm had reminded them of the desert's power and its mercy. Footsteps were gentler. Water was sipped more slowly. Even the camels seemed quieter. It was a sacred silence, a silence of being spared. and with every step, the wind hummed a soft tune of peace. The desert traders, faces from faraway cities. Just before sunset, figures appeared on the horizon. Another caravan. The two groups met without haste. Traders from opposite ends of the world. Greetings were slow, hands clasped, words exchanged in different tongues, but understood through tone and gesture. They shared tea brewed over fresh coals, compared spices, showed cloth, no haggling, just storytelling. One man had come from the coast, another from a mountain city. Their voices carried wind and snow and salt. As the sun set, both groups rested nearby, twin camps under the stars. And for a brief moment, the desert was a meeting place, not just a path. Old scrolls and spices, secrets in the satchels. As dawn returned, the caravans parted ways, one to the east, the other west. The silence returned, but something lingered, the scent of foreign spices and the memory of shared stories. Later that morning, one of the men unpacked a scroll to inspect for damage. The ink had faded, but the script, curved and beautiful, still told of forgotten kingdoms and names no longer spoken. Wrapped among the scrolls were small sachets of crushed herbs, fragrant, unfamiliar, possibly medicinal, possibly ceremonial. No one knew for sure. These were not just items of trade. They were fragments of lives, echoes of distant hills and valleys, of shrines and scholars, each piece wrapped in linen and silence. They repacked the satchels carefully, for in the desert, not every treasure shines. Some simply wait to be remembered. The camel's gaze, loyalty without words. Through every day of sand and sun, the camels remained, tireless, calm, constant. There were moments, quiet ones, when a man would catch the gaze of his camel. No words were shared, no commands given, just a moment of mutual understanding. The camels carried weight, both seen and unseen. They asked for little, a drink, a pat, shade when possible. Their eyes held stories, perhaps of past journeys, perhaps of deserts deeper than maps dared show. And as the sun began to fall again, a boy whispered to his camel. It didn't respond, but it listened, and it walked beside him, a map in the sand, the route they followed. That evening, the guide did something rare. He drew a map, not with ink, not on paper. In the sand, using his staff, he traced lines, curved, looping, broken. He pointed at stars, then back at lines. Others gathered around, silent, watching. There were no names, no distances, just a sense of direction, like wind following wind. When he was done, he smoothed it over with his palm, as if to say, the path is not to be remembered, only followed. And so they rested, and the map dissolved into the night. Final campfire, nearing the end of the journey. The fire that night was a little brighter. The air carried the scent of a nearby city, faint with smoke, hints of cooked food, distant bells. The men sat closer, their words more frequent, faces more open. The long silence of the desert had softened them. They spoke of arrival, of unloading, of returning home, or setting out again. The guide said nothing. He watched the flames, eyes reflecting sparks. A man told a joke. It was old. Everyone laughed. And above them, the stars blinked as always, calm, quiet, eternal. Caravans end, a peaceful arrival at the gates. At sunrise, the caravan crested a final ridge. Below them, a city, walls of stone, smoke curling from chimneys, movement in the streets. The camels sensed it. Their pace changed. No one cheered. No one ran. They entered slowly, respectfully, as travelers who had passed through time in silence. Children watched from doorways. Vendors paused. A bell rang from a tower. The journey was over. The desert behind them already began to fade from memory, but in their hearts, the rhythm of sand, sun, and stars would echo forever. And somewhere beyond the city walls, another caravan prepared to depart.